This short lesson is an add-on. It's a little extension to the lesson that you listened to and watched previously, in which we talked about adjectives, French adjectives that are actually placed before the nouns that they describe instead of afterwards. So remember that French adjectives are usually placed after the nouns that they describe, right? We've seen this over and over again. And when those nouns are plural, and if you want to use a partitive article, you use des. So here are some examples just to remind you what I'm speaking about. Je porte souvent des chemises noires. Je porte souvent des chemises noires. You see? So first of all, noir has to agree with chemise, which is feminine and plural, and it's not a bags adjective, so it goes after chemise. So if I want to use the partitive article, I go ahead with the plural one. Je porte des chemises noires, which means I often wear black shirts. Now, many times in English, we can leave the word some out, but in this lesson, I'm going to put it there so that you can know exactly what the des is referring to. Here's another example of when we put the adjective after the noun that it describes. On achète des fromages français pour la soirée. On achète des fromages français pour la soirée, which means we are buying some French cheeses for the party. D'accord? Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, you know that in this lesson, we're talking about a group of French adjectives that go before the nouns that they describe. That's what we talked about in the last lesson, and we refer to these as bags adjectives. So just to remind you what that acronym means, it's beauty, age, goodness, and size, right? So we're going to look at some sentences now. The first one that I want to show you is pretty long. In fact, I think it's too long. Too many words are being used. And when you look at this, you think there's got to be a way to make this sentence simpler. And there is. But first, let's look at it the long way. Il y a des lampes qui sont belles dans cette boutique. Il y a des lampes qui sont belles dans cette boutique, right? So this means there are some. Now remember, we don't have to say some in English, but I'm going to put it there. There are some lamps that are beautiful in this shop. So in this case, you see the word beautiful, I'm not putting it right next to lamp. I'm saying there's some lamps that are beautiful. So I have a new subject, I have a new verb, and then I say beautiful, right? But you can make this sentence so much nicer, shorter, simpler if you put the bags adjective belle before the noun. So remember, belle, that falls under the category of beauty. And watch what happens. Il y a de belles lampes dans cette boutique. Il y a de belles lampes dans cette boutique. You see? Now, doesn't that sound better than il y a des lampes qui sont belles dans cette boutique? Il y a des lampes qui sont belles dans cette boutique. And the comparative or the simpler sentence, il y a de belles lampes dans cette boutique. I like the second one better. But you'll see what's happened is that the partitive article des has become de. Now, this is what happens when you have the plural partitive article des placed in front of an adjective that precedes a plural noun. Plural noun, that's very, very, very important. Let's highlight that because this is only about plural nouns, d'accord? Only when you're using des, d'accord? Donc voilà, let's have a look at another example. J'aime bien écouter des chansons qui sont vieilles. J'aime bien écouter des chansons qui sont vieilles. Right? That's the long, too complicated sentence that we're going to shorten up by saying j'aime bien écouter de vieilles chansons. J'aime bien écouter de vieilles chansons. Right? So de becomes de when I place vieille in front of chanson. Beauty, age, goodness, and size. So vieille falls under the age category. D'accord? So let's just go back and let me remind you, I highlighted this word plural because a lot of times my students forget that this rule about des becoming de, it's only about des. D'accord? It's only about plural nouns and adjectives. So the rule to remember here is des des changes to de if it means some. Okay? And when I say if it means some, that means if it's a partitive article. Look here, à retenir, it means to retain, right? Don't forget this. So let's move on to the exception, because there's always an exception, and sometimes there's an exception to the exception. So the rule I've taught to you about de becoming de, I'm repeating myself, but it only is when the de is a partitive article and means some. It does not apply when de is a contraction of de and les. So remember, we learned that when you have de and les next to each other and it doesn't mean some, it means of the. It can mean of the. So, les touristes prennent des photos des monuments historiques. Les touristes prennent des photos des monuments historiques. D'accord? This means the tourists are taking some photos of the historical monuments. Now, I'll show you this sentence because I wanted you to see what I meant, the difference between de as some and de as of the. So in this example, you see the word de twice. Okay? But in this example, there's not an adjective describing the monuments, so you don't even need to think about the rule of de becoming de. There's no adjective there. There's no bags adjective. However, look at this example. Les touristes prennent des photos des beaux monuments historiques. Les touristes prennent des photos des beaux monuments historiques. So this means the tourists are taking some photos of the beautiful historical monuments. Here we still have 2 days, and the second one definitely comes before a bags adjective, and it's plural, just like the noun that it describes, but it doesn't mean some. It means of the. So we're going to refer to this as the of the exception. D'accord? À retenir, de does not change to de if it means of